Big league welcome, a big time welcome to all who are trying out Fantasy MLR for the first time this upcoming season. On this week's episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show, we discuss everything you need to know ahead of the 2024 Fantasy MLR season, answer your pressing questions, and of course, go over the latest happenings from around the league. It's also not too late to sign up if you still want to give Fantasy MLR a go. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode number 93 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of trying to make fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. And like I said at the top of the show in our teaser, a big time shout out to the new Fantasy Ruckers community members. We have released our Google form and our announcement that we are expanding it officially to more people to get them to try out Fantasy MLR for the first time. And the people have answered, and we've got a lot of responses here. So if this is the first time for you listening to the Fantasy Rucker Show, I am Ryan Yee, the brains and the creator behind Fantasy MLR. I'm with me every single week, Maddie Yee. Here with me. And we do have a special guest every once in a while, Devin Vanderpool, our in-house kind of rugby rookie who has taken the reins of Fantasy MLR and has learned a new sport in a very short amount of time. But nonetheless, Matt, the people came calling and they want Fantasy MLR.
They sure do, and it is exciting. And just another thing, you'll be able to recognize Vandy when he's on the show very quickly. He's a bald-headed, sometimes gross-looking, very handsome man. But you'll see his big head just shining right through as the third guy on the camera. So, and you'll learn to love him, as most people do.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to have him on soon throughout the season, especially when the 2024 MLR season kicks off, because he's obviously a big part of the OG Fantasy Ruckers League. Slowly trying to make that progress up. We had him on a couple episodes ago. He was proud of his 500 finish last year. I don't know where we dropped the bar there. Maddie, you're our former, or at least our most recent fantasy MLR
they should
champion.
know that, Ryan.
They do.
You didn't even announce that when you were introducing me. They should know that I'm the former and reigning champion of the league.
Fair enough. So if you need any fantasy expertise, at least for now, in the time being, Maddie does have the ins and outs when it comes to maybe how to be successful, at least for one season. But like I said, Matt,
maybe for a few weeks. That's about it.
Yeah, we'll see. But like I said, Maddie, I mean, we released it out there. We made the announcement on our socials on Discord that we were opening up Fantasy MLR to everyone out there. And like I said, the response has been fantastic. We got a whole bunch of people signing up for the Google forms, people really interested. Our Discord community has rapidly grown. And a lot of people are just itching to get their first shot at Fantasy MLR. And I couldn't be more excited to give people the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to how many MLR fans there are that want to get even more involved with the league, even more involved with the sport in North America. I mean, I don't know if they're all North American, but there are fans out there that want to get more involved the way that they can with other sports around the world. And I think, Ryan, we're just happy that we're able to provide that platform for the people where they don't have to pay money and they don't have to buy stupid trading cards.
No NFTs here. And you're going to learn, and the people are trying it out for the first time, even trying out fantasy for the first time, because I know we have, from our responses, some people are just testing out fantasy sports for the first time overall in any single sport through our Fantasy Ruckers platform, which is super exciting stuff. People are going to quickly realize that the way that you watch the MLR, digest the MLR, the way you analyze it is going to change very, very quickly in terms of when you have a fantasy MLR stake in it. I know I was talking with one of our longtime supporters, Jay Payne on Discord, who I asked, "Oh, like, are you going to be joining the fantasy MLR?" And he's just like, I'm on the fence right now about it because I don't know if I can conflict against my New England Free Jacks fandomship yet. That kind of has me.
He's going to be for a rude awakening when he finds out that he's not going to be able to get all the New England Free Jacks on his team.
It's true. It's very, very true. So we're super excited. Again, it's not too late either for people to try out Fantasy MLR and get signed up still. All of that information is all over our socials at the Fantasy Ruckers, X, Facebook, Instagram, in the description down below here on our YouTube page, wherever you're listening to it on the podcast. We have the link to our Google form for you to provide us the information for you to get signed up in a league, and show your interest and get you slotted here for the 2024 season. Time is ticking. We are trying to get, we are in the process of kind of putting things together, but again, not too late. And you want to check that out at the Fantasy Ruckers on any of our social media channels. And again, a lot of the details too is on our Discord, which you'll be able to join down below, which has been absolutely growing very, very quickly since our announcement, which is really, really cool to see.
Yep. And hey, we love that Discord community, and we know that it's going to get loud once the season starts. So, so yeah, definitely look out there.
All right. Well, we have a jam-packed episode in this one because of all of the new members that we have joining Fantasy MLR and all the new participants, the new faces. We decided this episode, the first one after we officially released the Google form and opened it up to the public, that we go through a little bit of a crash course on what Fantasy MLR is all about, kind of what it all entails. We're going to have our first Commissioner Yee's League update of 2024, which is, I'm super excited for. I missed that music. And of course, we do have some questions from some of the newer participants of Fantasy MLR, some of our longtime supporters that have some questions when it comes to Fantasy MLR that we're going to answer in our AskTFRShow segment as well, and kind of break down what's to come as we quickly approach the final few handful of weeks here ahead of the 2024 year. So a really busy episode in this one. Again, if you're not already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers to get all the details there, and we'll continue to provide everyone who has signed up for the league and who is looking to sign up for the league the details they need to participate in Fantasy MLR this upcoming season. But before we get into any of that, Maddie, a busy week here in the news and notes section of the league as we start to
and not necessarily with signings or trades.
Not necessarily with signings and trades. There's a big piece of news that I think has a really big impact and is a good sign for the league's future, which we'll get into. But let's first get into some of these signings and some of these trades. The first one I want to get into is Old Glory DC bringing one of their big-time players back, a marquee name, Nico Jones, New Zealander back rower that played with the OGDC partway through 2023 in his 8 appearances, scoring 1 try in that 8 appearance time with them. I think this is a big-time return for Nico Jones because of his partway through the season. Only 47 fantasy points, but still finished in the top 35 back row players with only having half the time played, 131st overall. So this is a player that's dependent on the playing time that he'll receive in this upcoming year. But if he's on the field, he's a reliable streamer. He's a guy you can put in your lineup and get you some fantasy points.
Yeah, no, he's definitely, coming in to be back row 33 it was and get 47 fantasy points. I know he had some duds of games throughout the latter half, but look, that was a tough back row to kind of contend with coming in halfway through the season. Hopefully, him getting a full season on the belt this year, he'll be able to have a bit more of an impact. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think he's going to be a fantasy relevant guy, but he's got some tough competition, right? Like they just brought in Dakota Worth. We don't know how much game time he's going to get. They still have Luataro Bavaro. They got Corey Daniel. They got Jameson, Fanana Banana, Colin Gross. Is he going to be in the second row or is he going to be in the back row? Who knows? So it'll be interesting to see where he slots in, but if he finds himself in that starting lineup, I can see him having quite a big impact this year.
Yeah, again, and that back row kind of group there in Old Glory, like you mentioned, Matt, is pretty log jam. But again, kind of to emphasize, if Nico Jones does find himself starting a few games here and
Yeah.
there, especially with that name value behind him, he should find himself some value here, at least fantasy value on a week to
Yeah.
week basis, if he is in that starting lineup. In round 13, had a season high 19.4 fantasy points when he ran for 120 meters gained, had a try assist, 8 tackles in that the 81 minutes that he played, including a breakdown steal. So that ceiling is there for Nico Jones,
Hmm.
right? When he gets that playing time, when he starts and is able to appear in that whole match, that ability to break that upper echelon of 15 fantasy points, get to that 20 fantasy point marker is there. Had a stretch where, he averaged around 5 points when he really didn't have that big of an impact. But again, he has that ceiling, kind of a boom bust type play if he finds himself in that starting lineup. So
Yeah.
Nico
And
Jones returning with the Old Glory DC.
yeah, and mind you, that's all on a struggling Old Glory DC team last year. So, yeah, you're hoping for a little bit even better performance this upcoming year.
All right, moving on. Another couple signings here with Matt, your favorite team, Los Angeles Rugby
Jeez.
Football Club, making a couple signings here, a couple international signings. Center from the London Irish made appearance in the English Premiership. James Stokes is coming to Los Angeles, and then a familiar name, Taz Smith, who you may recognize in pairing with Los Angeles, because he was a marquee name with the Giltinis when they were still a thing back in 2022. The Australian scrum half returns to Los Angeles, this time with Los Angeles Rugby Football Club.
Yeah, I mean Taz Smith. I don't think he got too much playing time being behind Goddard all his time at Giltinis. But hey, it's nice to see that these guys, some familiar faces, from the old Gilchrist days, are coming back to join LA again, and he's coming back to a similar theme of a crappy team name. So I'm glad he's going to feel right at home. And look, I think the more international talent that LA can bring in, I think that this is still, he was like James Stokes was part of their roster, but I think he will be an exciting guy to watch. And I think it'll be exciting to see how he can impact in the MLR and what he'll do for fantasy rugby.
And I love how I just kind of automatically switch that name just because it more rolls off the tongue better, saying LARFC. RFC LA is what it's supposed to be, but I think I might just refer to them as
Well,
LARFC moving
look, I
forward.
think we're deciding that we're either going to call them LA, genitals or LA Richards or LA Bellends. It's a given. Look, you can turn their logo. I was looking at this extensively, Ryan, that you can turn their logo either way, upside down, sideways, the other way, facing down, right side up. It still looks like a genital. Either
no,
way.
no matter
It's
how you
just
put it.
whichever way you wanna look. It's different parts of the genital. You want a whole picture? You want just the top? It's anything you really like. And look, again, Taz Smith is going to feel right at home going from Giltinis to RFCLA Generals. So
Yeah, well,
um,
I mean,
he'll be feeling good.
what we do know is that the chemistry with his RFC LA team seems to be going well. I mean, there's this notion that, all these players are coming in to start something brand new. We spoke with
Yeah.
Andrew Coe a couple episodes back. If you want to check out that interview, go to our YouTube page, go to the podcast there. And it was a very interesting conversation. Again, it was a guy who was kind of caught in the thick of everything that happened this past offseason when it came to being a part of the New York Ironworkers who folded late in 2023, to being part of that dispersal draft, to then joining the MLR's one of their newest teams, I guess their second newest team, after a team that we're going to talk about right here coming up. But RFC LA. Exciting things to come there. It sounds like through the eyes of Andrew Cohen, they add 2 players that should make an
And
impact here this upcoming season.
yeah, and I mean, just speaking on these two guys, James Stokes, like he's going to be in a legitimate battle for that center room behind Jason Emery and Will Leonard. So we'll see who prevails there. And ultimately, the guy who starts is going to have the most fancy impact out of that center room. And Taz Smith is going to be competing with Niall Saunders and Nick Hartley. So we'll see. We'll see what form Taz Smith is in after having a couple years off from the MLR.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, shifting on over now to that new team that I was alluding to. Anthem Rugby Carolina has
Jeez.
found themselves within their first trade, and that is with the
This is
Seattle
disgusting.
Seawolves. The Anthem Rugby Carolina squad receives Jake Turnbull, who finished as the front row 11 in 2023, 129th overall with 74.9 fantasy points. In return for 2024 salary cap considerations, something that we've seen a whole bunch of in the
Pennies.
past
Pennies,
there.
that's what it was.
For a player that is pretty notable and has been a marquee piece of that Seattle Seawolves squad for quite some time. Obviously, he joins the Anthem, who has been branded as this kind of
The worst
development
brand right
USA
behind RFCLA.
development USA Eagle squad. Jake Turnbull has USA rugby experience in the past. I believe making an appearance with the USA Eagles in, I believe, August 5th against Romania. He's Eagle number 562. So Jake Turnbull now finds himself in a New Jersey, staying out, or at least, excuse me, moving out east to Carolinas, and now going to appear with the Anthem.
Yeah. I mean, I think Brian Ray had a post there, and you'll notice we'll reference Brian Ray a lot because he has a lot of good ideas and good thoughts. But I think we talked about this, Ryan, like, what is going to be the quality of this team? Like, they're only going to have USA eligible guys. They're going to have no international players, which is how it should be. But we did not expect guys like Jake Turnbull. I mean, right. Jake Turnbull is a caliber, a quality MLR guy, not just fantasy wise, but also just a quality player overall. Is a legitimate starter across all the MLR teams, and it was a starter on was an in and out starter competing with Peter Malcolm last year on the Seattle Seawolves, one of the top teams in the MLR. So the fact that he's going to this Anthem Carolina team. I think that's a good sign, and I think that that's just a start to the type of competitiveness that we're going to see out of this Anthem team. So that's exciting. That's a real exciting start. He's definitely going to be fantasy relevant. I can see him as being almost like the staple or the start pillar of this team. And if we can see their kind of forward pack getting some momentum in these games, we could see him having some pretty big stats in the fantasy world.
Yeah, I think there was this notion, right, with this Anthem team that it was just going to be a whole bunch of kind of young, up and coming development, USA guys. But I guess there's something to be said too about, guys that are maybe on that cusp, right? Or maybe have just received some, Eagles caps and are early off in their international career. Jake Turnbull's not a guy you think of that because he's 30 years old, but he's a guy that has just recently appeared for USA. And if you want a guy and keep him around kind of that system, obviously with the Anthem having that connection with the USA Eagles, it's a perfect move for them. And I think if we start to see kind of like what you're mentioning, Matt, guys like this that are appearing for the Anthem, I think they'll be somewhat competitive. I don't know. Is it going to be difficult for them to win and be amongst the top tiers like the New England Free Jacks, like the Seattle Seawolves, like the San Diego Legion? It's going to be tough, but I think that gap between them and the rest of the league is not going to be as big as we had maybe foresaw it to be if they're going to be bringing guys like this moving forward.
So I mean, we just hope that this isn't the best of the best that they're bringing in, right? Like, you still got to fill in the other spots. You can start in the front row. He's a quality front row, but you got a lot of positions to fill. I know there's some rumors out there, but this is the only one that's really been confirmed by the trade wire is what they're calling it.
Yep.
On the website. But yeah, no, it's exciting. I'm kind of questioning, like, what is this? So you make salary cap consideration, sure, whatever. I don't know what that means, but if you make a trade with Anthem Carolina or whatever the heck they're called, you have to trade back a domestic player, not just a domestic player, but they have to be an American player.
Right.
And you'll be trading that American player for another American player. So I wonder, what does that look like? And then the other aspect of this, and I know that we didn't mean to get into this, and we got important things, but like, what about the fact that this Anthem team is now taking away some of the chances for the domestic spots to be filled on these MLR teams? Like, our team's going to be struggling to fill their domestic spots now that this team is just primarily domestic players. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, but maybe something to think about of like, are we going to see, I know last year we saw the case of like Seattle trying to change their lineup so that they can put enough domestic players in the lineup.
Right.
Because that's the requirement, right? So I wonder if, injuries happen. It's like, hey, what domestic players are left? They're all the guys that were left who we would have had in our bench, like, for development, all went to Anthem Carolina, and we don't
Sure.
have them anymore.
Or you're short some players, and the first team that you're calling up is Anthem. You're like, hey, you know what? We need a North American guy. We need a
Yeah.
US guy. We know that Anthem has no shortage of them, so let's get a trade
Yeah.
going with them. But again,
So
I think the dynamic again. That I think the overall arching theme is the dynamic of this partnership or this kind of this I guess ethos of having both the Anthem connected with USA Rugby. Like what are they obviously for the Toronto Arrows when they had their kind of emphasis on developing Rugby Canada, they were the only Canadian team, so it was very kind of simple and straightforward in terms of who was going
yeah,
where in terms of that. There's a bunch of other American teams. How do they prioritize kind of what players go where?
yeah,
Obviously there's going to be USA international guys on other teams. It's not like all of them are going to be going to the
yeah,
Anthem,
exactly.
but kind of what's that dynamic there. So
And
it should be interesting.
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see once they start filling this roster out. I know there's some rumors of like Ivan Pulu, maybe Shane Barry,
Hmm.
going, but we'll see. I hope they do it soon because we've got fantasy things to get into. We've got
True.
fantasy players, fantasy draft to get ready for. And I really hope that this roster gets put out soon so that the people know exactly what, future Eagles they can expect to be playing for this team.
And I think that's the important part too, Maddie, is that this Anthem team may not be the highest of caliber when it comes to the
They're gonna
grand
finish
scheme of
last.
teams in the MLR. But we have seen it in the past, at least from a fantasy perspective, that there are guys on every single team, no matter how bad, that are fantasy relevant and do make an impact. You look at last year, there are
Yeah.
a couple Toronto Arrows guys, right? As bad as they were, there were still a couple guys that you could slot in your lineup. Even how bad Dallas Jackals were, there were a couple guys on that Dallas team that you could slot in your lineup. Same with Chicago. So I think
Yeah.
again, we're gonna need to know. I'm not saying that all 15 guys, definitely not all 15 guys are gonna be on fantasy rosters, but there are gonna be select guys like Jake Turnbull who are gonna get a whole bunch of now playing time and opportunity
True.
on the Anthem that you're going to now prioritize. I mean, you look at Jake Turnbull and you look in the games that he started for the Seattle Seawolves. I mean, for a front rower from a fantasy perspective, round 6, 8.7 points. When he scored, 18 meters gain, had that 3 tackles, 3 steals in the 43 minutes he played. He scored 3 tries in the season. Had games with 8+ points many of times, and that's exactly what you're looking for from a
Yep.
front row player. Your average for new listeners and new people who are listening to or who are going to be playing fantasy MLR, your front row is kind of that position that doesn't get you much points, but averaging around probably 3 to 4 that you're happy with. But Jake Turnbull looks like that guy that has that ceiling to reach towards those double digits if he's able to get that opportunity, and we'll see whether or not he's able to do that on the Anthem.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how this all plays out. But Ryan, before we move on to maybe some of the bigger non-signing moves, I know Seattle after this kind of announced some signings.
Mhm.
I guess bringing some guys down from Vancouver. Reed Davis, I think he's Canadian eligible flanker playing for the Canada Selects. And then they brought a guy from one of my old rival teams, the UBC Old Boy Ravens. Jesse McHale. So we'll see how that plays out. I think these guys are probably more so just roster fillers as guys and as teams are rounding out their roster.
It'll be interesting to see because I know the Seawolves were kind of that little bit of a hub before really, because the Rugby Canada is based right out of Vancouver there, and that's just
Yeah.
across the border. It'll be interesting to see how many of these types of moves and how big of an advantage now the Seattle or how much they're going to take advantage Seattle-wise with some of these Canadian
Yeah.
players that are kind of that top tier now
is
that there
true.
is no Toronto Arrow squad, which should be interesting. All right, yeah, let's shifting over to kind of the last piece of news. That's actually, I think, the biggest news of the week. That's not signing or trade related, but the MLR has voluntarily recognized the US RPA as the official representative body for all MLR players. And the reason why this is big time news is obviously we are a player show. We bring players on this podcast, and we love to get their insight and always support the boys who are putting their bodies on the line to give us some great product on the weekend in terms of matches and everything like that. We know the history that the MLR has with the USRPA in terms of some of the stuff that has happened, whether it was the Giltinis, Gilgronis folding and the USRPA stepping up in that situation, and the dialogue that's happened there. But now for the MLR to officially recognize the USRPA as that kind of governing body for MLR players, for me, is just that next big step for the MLR to move forward in terms of becoming a legitimate league. You look at any of your Power 4 leagues across North America, they all have governing bodies that represent the players that play within those leagues. The MLR has now taken that step to have an official body that is doing this, and the USRPA is doing that. And we know that they have been vocal about representing players, and it's a big time move for the players, for sure.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I think this brings stability, which is something that we haven't seen in the MLR really ever. And I think this provides some sort of safety and stability for the players. They have a union now, at least that they can fall back on and feel like, hey, we're going to be protected if anything like what has happened every year has happened, right? Like, I think it now it was like New York, Toronto, both fold. Like, this is happening too often to not have some sort of association, some sort of players union created and recognized by the league. I know that they've been trying to do this. I believe it's Nick Civetta who has been leading this whole thing. I know that he's been trying to reach out to the MLR to make sure that, hey, you guys are recognizing us. And I think it started when the whole Giltinis happened, and that was when it got really big. So yeah, I think it's great for the league. I think it's great for the players. I think this, in a weird way, provides some sort of stability to the league. And I think only good things can come from this.
Yeah, Nick Civetta is the board chair for the USRPA. So again, it's reassuring to see. I think, again, stability is the big word here, and that is what something like this does for a league that is still trying to blossom and grow. Again, it's just slowly implementing the major kind of characteristics that official and legitimate leagues have. And again, you want to establish yourself in the North American sports space. This is one of those things you check off the box and say, hey, we got this now. We can move on. A little bit of stability. Our players are, best represented and are going to be able to, voice their opinions when things do come up, especially when things like what we've experienced in the MLR have come up in the past.
Yeah, and look, I think, like, aside from just the league, I think what we're looking at here is, like, if I'm an international player and I'm looking at the MLR and I see what has happened in the past few years, yes, we've had a great turnout of international players. Even this year, we've had a great turnout of international players, and new international players and new big names. And I don't think that the union is in the association necessarily for the big names, but we can expect to continue to see international guys coming in because they can say, hey, I can be part of this association. I can feel some sort of safety knowing that I'm going to have some security and fallback if anything goes wrong, and an association there to represent me if anything goes wrong, since I'm taking this risk to move to another country and play in the U.S. So hopefully this brings kind of more international players, ups the quality of the MLR, ups the quality of fantasy MLR, and just puts a better product out on the field.
Yeah, no, super exciting stuff. So again, I think out of all the news that came out this past week, that was among the biggest, and I think it's a huge step forward for Major League Rugby as a whole. So yeah, I mean, again, we're getting closer this season. The kickoff at the beginning of March here, just over a month away to that kickoff of MLR 2024. I think we're going to see, some of these signings maybe, slow down a little bit, trades slow down a little bit as teams are finalizing their final rosters. We'll find out kind of this anthem roster moving forward, and then hopefully we'll be all set up here for the start of Fantasy MLR in 2024. But with that being said, it's time to update the people here, Maddie, and it's time to have our very first Commissioner's Update of 2024.
These trumpets are going to be saying that I'm last place soon. It's going to be the worst.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Hear ye, hear ye. Here is Commissioner Yee with a Fantasy Ruckers League update. And this one's a little bit more important, probably the most important
Yeah.
one that we've ever had,
Well,
because now this is what do you call me? The Commissioner Supreme? Is that what I can be called now? Because I guess
Ryan, are you self-naming yourself
I might
Supreme?
I might be self-naming
You
myself. I don't
cannot
know.
be self-naming yourself Supreme, okay? We're not going to have that. That is not a name that I think you can voluntarily give yourself.
Are you sure?
I think you need to earn Supreme. Like,
Okay. We'll work on
Emperor
it.
Supreme Palpatine didn't just name himself
I'm pretty
that.
sure he did.
He did not. He had lightning coming out of his hands, and that was like a pretty good sign of, hey, yeah, you're pretty Supreme. So,
I got fantasy stats coming out these fingers.
well, I don't know. I don't know, Ryan. I don't know
Since
about
day
that.
one, man. All right. Well, if you're brand new to this podcast, this is the Commissioner Yee's League update, and this is the spot in the segment that we're going to give all of our league members, all of the people playing in their Fantasy Ruckers leagues, an update with what is the latest going on in Fantasy MLR with regards to the Fantasy Ruckers platform. So obviously, with us opening up Fantasy MLR to everyone who wants to try it, there are a few things to kind of update the people with, since people have signed up using the Google form and have joined our Discord community. I think the biggest question a lot of people are having right now is, where are we now? What are the next steps? And just to give everyone kind of an idea of where we kind of stand in terms of progressing forward here with Fantasy MLR, we are continuing to receive responses through our Google form on people who are interested in trying out Fantasy MLR. And I am currently in the process of sorting everyone out into the respective leagues. I know certain people have requested to be in the same league as some of the people that they know. Some people have signed up on their own. So we're just kind of distributing and organizing the different participants into their respective leagues, and making sure that everything is status quo there. I want to give a big shout out to the select few who did sign up on the Google form, who are willing to be commissioners.
Yeah, what if they want to be Supreme, Ryan?
No, see, that's the thing, though. That doesn't work. I'm
They
supposed
can.
to be
Well, they
this-
can
no.
self-name themselves according
can't-
to you. They
we-
can just self-name themselves
See,
Commissioner
no,
Supreme.
we can't set that precedent. We can't set that precedent.
You're about to.
Because we cannot have anyone being like overthrowing, or we can't have any Julius Caesar type. I've said it a bunch here. I run a democracy. I'm a man of the people,
This is not true.
and we are not allowing people to start getting the idea that they can just overthrow me here. I am Commissioner
How do you think
Supreme, and
Vandy
I'm
got to
locking down.
500?
That is true. That is true. But I want to give a huge shout out to those who are willing to be commissioner of a league here. If you did answer yes to that question, I'm starting to kind of sort those out. We do need one commissioner per league, and essentially, I mentioned in the Google form of what those responsibilities entail. It's essentially just making sure everything is operating smoothly. Any announcements, any directive will be coming from me through you guys to kind of distribute that through your league. You guys will be facilitating the offline draft, and things like that.
And you could run a coup.
No, I'm squashing that right here. That's not a thing. That's not that. Well, I just said we're not going to be setting that precedent
Look,
here.
look, when you name yourself Supreme Commissioner, anything can happen, all right? The people would not be
boy.
happy to hear that.
No, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, what's Caesar Commissioner? Can I do that?
Ryan, this isn't, you're calling yourself the guy that got overthrown?
No, but there were a bunch of Caesars. Come on. All right. How about
Yeah, there's also a salad called Caesar, so you want to be that too?
That's a pretty good salad. I don't know. It's a pretty good comparison. But nonetheless, though, I will be creating a channel specific to commissioners once I have all the
That's
leagues
where it
organized and finalize who will be a commissioner for a specific league for this upcoming season. I will be reaching out to you. All the resources, everything that you guys need in order to operate your leagues, in order to kind of oversee your leagues, you guys will have. Don't be worried. Again, I really do appreciate all of your guys's extra initiative here to be willing to kind of take on that role. I know there's a handful of you guys out there, so I want to personally give my thanks out to you guys, because without you guys, this would not be possible. I know that I've been commissioning my league and trying to rile in these rascals in our founding members league. So I understand kind of everything that's involved there, and I will be there right there for you to help you guys out. And again, can't thank you all enough. So again, leagues are being sorted right now. Databases are being collected in terms of putting together the final touches in terms of the players on there, and then finalizing these commissioner lists, which will then get the details out for you. Again, all of our information, anything that you need to know, will be distributed on our Discord channel and on our social media pages. If you know anyone out there that wants to try out Fantasy MLR, please share our Google form link. Share our announcement. Let's get the word out there. Let's get as many people playing Fantasy MLR as we possibly can, because again, this is only going to help grow the league and be able to experience the league in a different way. And I think, kind of to Vandy's sentiment, who was a brand new rugby fan, only started watching MLR when he started playing Fantasy MLR when we first started this thing, and he's completely bought in. We hope we can bring that same experience to a whole bunch of new fans as well through this Fantasy MLR platform. So it should be a lot of fun. Again, if you're a listener out there and a viewer and you want to join, all that information is down below in the description. Check out our socials at the Fantasy Ruckers, Google form link. You can find it. Let's get the word spread about joining this thing. It's going to be a super fun year, and I cannot wait. With that being said, let's kind of move on forward here, man, and let's start talking a little bit about Fantasy MLR for these new participants, or people, maybe some people have followed along, but none of them have necessarily been fully dove into it outside of the 8 members that have been in our founding members league that got to experience this over the past 2 years. But I think the biggest thing here is to go over just the logistics and the general kind of rules here when it comes to Fantasy MLR. And I want to reiterate to the people, I announced this in our Discord community, that all the rules, all the league format, all of that will be released on our Discord. There'll be a full FAQ, a full document, full everything for you guys to kind of dive into shortly. It should be coming up this week. So just keep an eye out for that, and you'll be able to see everything that we talk about here in written form to understand how you will be playing Fantasy MLR this season. Let's start off, Matt, with kind of league format and kind of the positions that members will be drafting in their leagues. And we broke it down essentially into, I believe, 8 different positions. We got front row, second row, back row, a forward flex, scrum half, fly half, center, back 3, back flex, and a defense special teams. I think that's 10, not 8.
Ryan, what the heck is that counting from you?
8 plus 2. So there's those positions that you'll be filling out. For those of you who don't know what a flex position is, it's essentially any forward position that you can pop in there. But Matt, as someone who has experienced Fantasy
I'm not
MLR
giving anything up, right?
over the past 2 years, what are your kind of any quick tidbits that you have when it regards to these positional kind of makeups and roster formats?
This is the quick breakdown, all right? Front row, second row, not going to get that many points, all right? Front row, second row, you're hoping for the best. Back row, that's your stars. That's where you're going to get a lot of the points from. That's where you're hoping to get big key guys. And then your forward flex, if you put, you're kind of silly if you're going to put a front row, second row, unless you were really high on those guys. It's usually going to be a back row, but hey, you do you. It's your fantasy managing, your fantasy team. You're the fantasy manager. You'll figure it out along the way. And, you might end up last. You might end up first. You might end up 500. Who knows? Backs, all right? Scrum half, same as front row and second row. Not that high scoring. Fly halves, get yourself a kicker. You're going to need one because they're going to help you out a lot.
And just to add to that is that you denote one kicker every single week. So you designate one person. So you may have...
Make sure that guy kicks.
You may make sure that guy kicks. Or in the other way, you may have multiple people on your starting lineup that do kicks for some reason. Maybe you have a fullback that it ends up having kicking responsibilities for a certain team. You only designate one kicker every single week. So any of the kicking points that a player gets who is not designated as your kicker will not count towards your total for that week. So
I don't know, Ryan, how up to date. I don't know, Ryan, how up to date you are with women's rugby, but Canadian Sophie DeGood, if she was in the MLR, she's a back row that kicks conversions. Oh my goodness, she would be
number
at
one,
the top,
number one off the board.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, backs. All right, scrum half, fly half, same old thing. Make sure you have a kicker. Centers, that's your back row similarity, right? That's your centers. You want your star. You want to get the big guns. You want to get the guy that's going to get a lot of meters gained, get a lot of tackles, and then the back 3. Another one that could be your star. But you got to see, do you want meters gain? You want tries? You got to pick your players, right? And then your back flex Really, you're usually going to be throwing in a center or back three there. Up to you, up to what you're high on. And defense, it's a shot in the dark. You have no clue unless, basically just don't pick Anthem. That'll probably be your best bet.
Yeah. So again,
And probably not Dallas.
it breaks down to front row, second row, back, forward flex, scrum half, fly half, center, back three player, and then a back flex and a defense special teams. In every league, there's going to be about 8 to 10 teams, always an even number. So there'll be always a plentiful with the 12 teams that we have in the MLR. There will always be a defense or special team available to you. There will always be, unless they're holding on, teams are holding on to 2, but you'll make sure you want to. You'll make sure you want to
yell at that
yourself. But 8 to 10 teams is going to be what the league is formatted with. Leagues will run up until round, I believe, round 15. And then our finals and semifinals will be 16, 17. They're heading into that. Let's start going into, you talked about meters gained. You broke that down, Maddie, but let's talk about some of the scoring, how that works. It was a huge year for us last year because we were able to expand our stats into what we were able to collect. And this year, it looks like we are going to be able to do the exact same there. We have meters gained. We have, of course, tries, try assists, tackles, breakdown steals.
Yep. Turnovers are minus.
And
70 minutes,
80 minutes.
If your guy's a naughty guy, yellow card, red card.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll break it down here. So meters gained, it's 0.1 meters for every, or 0.1 points, I should say, for every meter gained. It is 0.3 for every tackle, 2 points for a try assist, 5 points for a try. When it comes to kicking, 1 point for a conversion, 1.5 for a penalty. For those minutes played bonus, if a player plays over 70 minutes, he gets a half point bonus. If he plays over 80 minutes, he gets a 1 point bonus. -4 for a yellow card, -8 for a red card, and -0.5 for a turnover, 2 points for a breakdown steal. And then where that set piece and defensive position, kind of similar to that special teams, if any of you play fantasy football, they are able to get try assists when a try is scored off of a line out, maul, or a scrum, and they also get offensive bonus point and a defensive bonus point, exactly how the MLR scores them. So if your team scores 4 more tries or 4 or more tries, they get a 1 point bonus. If they lose within 7 points during that week, you'll get a 1 point defensive bonus. So again, it's just kind of breaking down and highlighting those stats and adding those meters gained, adding those tackles. You're able to find a lot of value in certain specific players. That's why Maddie mentions back row players and center players. Center players tend to get a lot of those meters gained. Back row players tend to get a lot of those tackles. So they get a lot of those consistent points. But then you look at your back three players going to score and have that chance to score a whole lot of tries, kind of that boom or bust play. So again, kind of balances out there.
And all of this, and maybe we should kind of bring it back for some of the newer fantasy guys. Or some of the people that maybe aren't used to the North American fantasy rugby and have only played kind of the, like the salary cap, whatever it's called, type fantasy. But, you're using all these stats. You're going to look at the pool of players and you're going to be competing with the 8 to 10 guys in your league at the start of the year who can draft the best team and predict who's going to do well. And then also throughout the year, have the opportunity to kind of pick guys off of what we call the waiver, and be able to pick guys up based on their performance, drop guys based on their performance, maybe injuries, and make those decisions throughout the year, and value them correctly to be able to pick them up and help your team throughout the year. The draft is where you can definitely lose the league and lose the season. The waiver wires are where you win the year.
That's true. It's a good point. Very, very good point. And I that's what I want to kind of get into next here, Maddie, is kind of the scheduling of the year. And Matt's exactly right here. We've taken the North American fantasy approach here and have applied it to the world of rugby and the world of fantasy MLR. I know historically with a lot of fantasy rugby, especially overseas, when it comes to Premiership, when it comes to World Cup, when it comes to Six Nations, it's that salary cap, pick your kind of lineup with the most value type game. This is much more like the fantasy football or the fantasy baseball, where you're drafting a team at the start of the year. We're going to have those drafts, and again, those will all be facilitated through our commissioners about a week before the season starts. And you'll essentially sit down at a given time with your league members, and you'll basically go through a draft where you're going to select a team that is going to be yours, at least heading into the season. There'll be 15 rounds of you to pick your 10 starters and your 5 bench players, and it's your job to fill out your roster the way it is. Though it's in a snake style format, so if you pick first, you're going to pick last in the second round, and it reverses every time, so everyone has fair share. That order will be randomly generated by your commissioners, and then you'll go forward and you'll have that team that you draft, and then essentially throughout the year you have that ability to, like Matt said, pick guys off of the waiver wire. For those of you who are new to fantasy and don't know what that is, basically players are locked to be picked up until Wednesday morning, and essentially you put in these claims or these bids with this auction money that you have, and essentially pick up these guys when Wednesday morning rolls around. Whoever bids the most ends up getting that player, and then after that day it's a free-for-all for you guys to kind of pick players up. And again, you can make trades, and it's essentially quote unquote your fantasy squad. You are the manager of this team. There are no duplicate players like Six Nations or Premiership Rugby where you're going up against other lineups or comparing yourself to other lineups that have the same players as you. If you have a guy, he is the only guy in that league that you have him out of the 8 to 10 teams. And it's just about going from week to week, facing that other squad, that other lineup that you go against, and hopefully scoring more fantasy points than them and coming away with a W each week. So that's kind of how the rotation goes. I know it might sound a little bit complicated, especially to our newer fantasy players, and trying to meld that with rugby, especially if that's a new sport for you as well. Again, all these details and all this is going to be clearly outlined for you on our Discord. All the documents, all the rules, everything you need to know when it comes to how fantasy MLR operates, the scoring, the roster structure, the league format, the scheduling when it comes to waiver wire, how you pick up players, things like that. That's all going to be outlined in that, and it'll be very clear and concise. And again, if anyone has any questions, we got channels for you to reach out to us in order to get those answered. Use the hashtag AskTFRShow. We'll answer those questions on this podcast and on our Discord community. So again, there's always help for you, and we're here to just grow the game. We don't want anyone feeling like they're running behind.
Yeah, and the OG members. I mean, shout out Stephen Lowen has clearly been active in the chat, just making sure everybody's welcome, making sure everybody understand what's going on. And yeah, we'll be right there with you the whole way, walking you through it. If Vandy can pick it up, then really anybody can pick it up.
That's true.
Right?
Very, very true.
So you always got Vandy beat, and if he did it, you can do it too.
And probably a big question that people are having is, where the heck are we playing this fantasy MLR? And the I should say the real brains behind kind of to make this magic happen has been Alistair Kirschpool, Oddball Gentleman. You probably have seen him on Discord. He is our website guy, our website guru that has been putting together our website. He put together our last year's he put together our last year's lineup. That is true. I'll give him that. I'll be the Supreme Junior. He put our website together for our founding members when we expanded this out, and that website was fantastic. We are revamping the whole thing and making it look cleaner, making it operate better for all of our league members, and that's where we're going to have everyone have their fantasy MLR leagues and where they'll be operating their rosters. Once that website is fully up and running, that announcement will be made. You'll be able to check out the website. Right now, our website only has the stats from last year, and it kind of is a different look than what it's going to be this year, but you can still go check that out. That is why on the Google form we had you list your email. We're going to get you signed up. We're going to get you an account, and that's all going to be facilitated. Again, all that information when it comes out will be on our Discord channel when that does. So make sure you stay there. All the supplemental material will be on there, especially on top of all the rules, on top of explaining how this whole thing works. There's going to be rankings. There's going to be this podcast that comes out on there. There's going to be everything on there that for you to kind of look out for and be ready to go in terms of what you need to know ahead of this upcoming fantasy MLR.
Yeah, but not my rankings. You don't get my rankings.
I mean, like the 2023, right? Like
yeah, but they don't get my rankings.
So, but let's get into this, Maddie. Hashtag AskTFRShow segment here. There were a few questions. Now that we've gone through everything that we think members need to know, there were a few outline questions that were mentioned in our Discord community. where people were just asking kind of some more details in terms of what to expect this season and other things that they want to know. And we have a question
Fire him.
from James, Discord handle James Canaday, and he asks, "Where can I find player stats?"
This is imposter. This is James Delay. This is not James Canada. He just made another account and he's trying to hype himself up with the stats.
There you go. There you go. Now, yeah, as soon as James got Canadian citizenship, he turned his thing from
Oh
MLR
my
stats to James
goodness.
Canada. No, but this is a different James. Probably just as
Yeah,
cool of a
right.
James, James
Probably
Canaday. But he asked where you can find player stats. And my answer to that is we just kind of mentioned to it. You can go on right now, thefantasyruckers.com, and you'll be able to see all of last year's 2023 stats. Our player rosters are there. You can even have a look at kind of how the Fantasy Ruckers League operated to kind of get an idea on weekly matchups and things like that. But you can go onto
Yep.
our player database, click on and search whatever player. It can be sorted by team, sorted by position, and you can kind of start having an early look at who was doing what last season. It breaks it down from a week to week performance as well, fantasy performance on the website. And you can see that all the way up to
Can,
round 17 when our fantasy championship got played.
can they see the standings last year on there?
I believe they can.
Well,
I believe
yeah,
they
just
can.
take a gander. Just take a gander. If you ever want to see what a winning team looks like, you'll be able to see it.
And again, I just want to emphasize that the website is going to look completely different than what you see it there now. But that being said, all the stats are up there for all those who want to get a head start into doing your fantasy MLR 2024 research and getting a jump start on winning a championship in your league
Yeah.
for the 2024 season.
Keynote, use sticky notes.
Use sticky notes. I mean, that was the tip that John, our inaugural season winner, gave to you, Maddie, to hand over the torch to you to take over that championship. So we'll see whether or not you can pass it along to anyone else. Second question coming in on hashtag AskTFRShow. Where can I find a concise team makeup scoring system FAQ for fantasy MLR? That was asked by Nick. Discord handle Muddy Rogue 11018.
Jeez.
Welcome to
lot of
the
numbers.
league, Nick, and I should also say welcome to the community, James, as well. I'm glad you guys are participating.
How many
in
muddy rogues are
fantasy
there before
MLA.
Nick?
I guess
There was
11,018 of them before
17.
before 11,017. Yeah, I guess before he answered. But this was I did answer out there. Just before here on this podcast, I also reached out to Nick personally here. But again, I want to reiterate, I just
Nick.
wanted to use this question to say FAQs, rules will all be coming out in Discord, and they'll have everything that you need to know for the upcoming season. We mentioned it in the Commissioner Easy League update. I'll mention it again. Just keep an eye out on our socials, on Discord, when that's all out. Should be coming up this week at some point. Last question here on hashtag AskTFRShow. Is Discord required for fantasy MLR? Also asked by Nick, Muddy Rogue 11,018. And unfortunately, yes, Discord is required for fantasy MLR for this season. Communication, we found, has been the biggest thing when it comes to keeping fantasy MLR alive. And the way it's all going to work basically is for people who signed up, you'll be in the Discord. I've got your Discord usernames, and essentially, as I'm organizing you into your respective leagues, I will be creating a league channel for each of your the league that you're in. So you're going to be able to be in a private group with the other 8 to 10 or other 7 to 9 people who are with you in your league, and you'll be able to communicate through there. Your commissioner will be in there, and you'll be able to kind of facilitate the draft through the Discord. You'll be able to facilitate any other communication that you need.
Trash talk.
I'll be able trash talk, talk about the week, talk about MLR with the people who you're going to be competing with on a weekly basis. Yeah, trash talk's a big one. We love seeing that. And I'll be able to oversee that, so I know that if anything's coming up, I'll be able to kind of check that out. But that's why Discord is so important. If you are planning to create a league that has all the members who know each other, like if you have 8 buddies that you want to get together and create a league, there can be an exception made as long as I have the connection and communication with the commissioner. There is an exception that can be made for you guys to not everyone having to be in the Discord, but for anyone who is in a league that's in a mixed jumble of people who do know each other and don't know each other, Discord will be required. And it'll be a fun way to meet new people. I know for us, it's introduced a lot of new people that all love rugby and love to talk MLR, who didn't know each other before, and now we're
Yeah.
all really, really close friends. So it's really cool to see, especially as it's happening live on the Discord community.
Love to see it, Ryan.
Love to see it. All right. Well, just as we start to wrap up this episode, basically, I guess the big question here is what's to come? What is coming up on these next few
Well,
weeks here?
you
This was
know,
kind of a dense, fantasy rules type podcast here,
Yeah.
to kind of get the new members kind of dipping their toes into the fantasy MLR waters here to get kind of ready for the upcoming season. But we have a whole bunch coming up over the next couple
Yeah.
weeks.
And if I could just quote the US MLR Twitter admin, about 2 weeks ago, they said 42 days, fam, 42 days, fam. And we are about 2 weeks after that. So it is approximately 1 month away from the start of both the MLR and the fantasy MLR season, which means, like Ryan said, drafts are coming up in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That means we got to start prepping, and we're here to help you prep.
Absolutely.
And we got what rankings, Ryan?
Yep, we do our annual top 5 at each position rankings.
We're really good at these guys.
Yeah, this was a hit last year. We did really, really well. Basically, the Chicago Hounds absolutely scarred me for life, and my confidence in believing so much in any single team. And I think that might appear here this season. But yeah, we got our top 5 at each positions coming up for the 2024 season, which is fun. We also do a mock draft in terms of who we think is going to go where, and of course, every single episode we break down the news and notes. We'll continue to do our best because we love bringing on friends of the show onto the Fantasy Ruckers show. We've had Andrew Coe in the past, Andrew Quatrin. We've had Mike Smith on, who was a big part of San Diego. We had Jack McRogers on when he was with the Toronto Arrows, and just have a whole bunch of people that we'd love to get insight about the league and their thoughts on fantasy MLR. It's always the best, Matt, to get their reaction to their fantasy ranking and how they're
Always
doing
a good
fantasy
time.
type stuff. So again, on top of the interviews, just a whole bunch of stuff to get you prepared for the fantasy MLR season. And then when the season kicks off, we'll be right there with you to kind of experience it and give you the advice that you need to know to win that championship for the 2024 year.
Yeah, and unfortunately, everybody's going to be basing it off this advice, maybe, or using it in their research. So you guys are basically all in the same level field. So it's just a matter of who really wants to listen or who thinks we're a bunch of dodos.
It's true. It's true. And we'll see whether or not
And hey, you got to figure that out yourself.
And
We
that's
can't. Well, we know the answer, but
and
you got to figure it out yourself.
And that's the game within the game when it comes to fantasy MLR. But again, I'm so excited that we are finally able to bring fantasy MLR to a wider audience, have people try it out, get people involved in MLR, have them digest it, have them get interested in a different way. Again, this is all part of just growing the league, and fantasy sports, we believe, especially here on this podcast, is a big part of growth of any league and being able to bring new people in, especially in a nuanced sport like rugby that is still growing and still trying to gain popularity here in North America.
Yeah, and you're going to want to kind of listen in for these top 5s. I've got some juicy top 5s lined up. I got one theme for maybe one of the positions, and it's forgiveness. And, you'll see. You'll have to see.
We'll see, and I guess that'll be coming up in the coming weeks here. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out as well for any other information and announcement on our Discord and on our socials at the Fantasy Ruckers. Spread the word about fantasy MLR. Get people to sign up on that Google form. Still got a couple weeks, a week or two for people to sign up. So if you have any friends who are interested in playing, want to get into rugby, get the word out that there is an opportunity for them to try it out. Still plenty of time for people to get signed up. So super exciting stuff right down to the home stretch here to the start of MLR 2024, which means another fantasy MLR campaign with a whole bunch of new friends, which should be some exciting stuff. All right. For Matt Yee, for myself, Ryan Yee, we'll be back next week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Miss you, Vandy.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.